You'll see, Dad. You'll see who's right. Those were the last words my son Michael said to me, before turning his back and walking out of my house in Cleveland that March afternoon in 2019. What he didn't know was that I had lived through the exact same situation 30 years earlier, and I knew perfectly well how this story was going to end. My name is Robert Thompson. I'm 73 years old, and I spent my entire life working as an elementary school teacher in the Cleveland public school system. I raised my 3 children practically alone after my wife Sarah passed away, when Michael, the youngest, was just 12 years old. I got them through with my teacher's salary, with discipline, with love, but most importantly, with the advice my own father had given me when I was young. Have you ever felt that frustration of watching your children make decisions that you know are going to hurt them? Have you had to bite your tongue while watching them walk straight toward a cliff that you already know? That was my reality for years with Michael. From a very young age, Michael showed he was intelligent, charismatic, but also stubborn. When he finished high school, I advised him to study for a college degree, to prepare himself well, to build something solid. "Dad," he would tell me with that arrogant smile that bothered me so much, "times have changed. You don't need to study so much anymore. I'm going to make money fast, you'll see." At 20, Michael got into the business of selling used cell phones. He started small, buying and selling phones at the Sunday flea markets. At first, things went well for him. He made more in a week than I made in a whole month as a teacher. Every time we saw each other, he would show off his new shoes, his gold chain, his brand new pickup truck. "See, Dad? I told you I didn't need to study. Look at everything I have," he would tell me while adjusting his designer shirt. "Your advice is outdated. Today's world is different." I would just look at him and respond with the same patience I had learned from my years as a teacher. "Son, easy money goes away as fast as it comes. Solid foundations are what last a lifetime." But Michael would laugh at my words as if they were old men's tales. By the time he turned 25, Michael already had his own cell phone store in downtown Cleveland. He bragged that he made in one day what I made in a month. He had married Jennifer, a very pretty girl who shared his mentality of easy living. They lived in a rented house in Westlake, drove new cars, dined at the most expensive restaurants in the city. Every time we had Sunday dinner at his older sister Emily's house, Michael would take the opportunity to show off his success and make me feel bad for still being just a teacher. "Dad, quit that school already. Come work with me. I'll pay you double what you make there wasting time with kids." But I had learned something my father taught me when I was young. "Robert, businesses that grow too fast without solid foundations fall just as fast. Education, knowledge, honest work, that's what's secure." And I would pass on those same pieces of advice to Michael, but he would just shake his head as if I were an old man who didn't understand anything about the modern world. "Dad, your advice is from the 60s. Things are different now. You have to move fast, take advantage of opportunities. You can't just wait around your whole life." The truth is that during those years, sometimes I even doubted myself. I would see my son with so much money, with so many comforts, while I continued living in my same 2-bedroom house in Ohio City, driving my 2005 Honda Civic, buying my clothes at Walmart. Had Michael been right? Had I been too conservative my whole life? But then I would remember my father's words. Patience and persistence always beat haste and excessive ambition. And I would continue teaching my classes, saving for my retirement, living humbly but peacefully. In 2018, things started to change for Michael. Cheap Chinese cell phones flooded the market and his business began to have problems. He wasn't selling like before. He had to lay off 2 employees, but Michael remained confident. "It's just a rough patch, Dad. I'll figure out how to fix it." I tried to advise him again. "Michael, maybe it's time for you to look for something more stable. You can study at night, get a steady job. You're 32 years old, you still have time to build something solid." His response was the same as always. "Dad, you don't understand business. This is going to work out. I just need a good opportunity, and I'll come out ahead. Do you know someone who is so proud that they prefer to sink rather than admit they were wrong?" That was my son Michael. His pride was bigger than his intelligence. In December 2018, a friend offered Michael to get into an online beauty products business. "It's the future, Dad," he told me excitedly. "I'm going to be the main distributor for all of Ohio. I'm going to make millions." To get into that business, Michael had to sell his cell phone store and use all his savings. He also borrowed money from his in-laws and even pawned his truck. When he told me about his plans, I only said, "Son, be careful. If something sounds too good to be true, it usually is because it's not true." "Oh, Dad, always with your negativity." "Why can't you be happy for my success? Why do you always have to find problems with everything?" That was the conversation we had in March 2019, the last time Michael agreed to talk to me as a son. After that, he only spoke to me when he needed something or when he wanted to show off some momentary achievement. For 6 months, Michael was convinced he had found the goose that laid golden eggs. He bought products wholesale, sold them online, recruited people to work under him. His social media was full of photos with wads of cash, trips to Miami, expensive dinners. Did you see the photos I posted on Facebook, Dad? Did you see all the money I'm making? But I, who had seen many young people in my 40 years as a teacher, knew how to recognize when someone is trying to convince others of something they themselves aren't sure of. Michael's photos had something forced, desperate about them. In September 2019, the collapse began. It turned out that the beauty products company was a pyramid scheme. The owners disappeared with all the distributors' money. Michael lost everything: his savings, his in-laws' money, even his pawned truck. But the worst part wasn't losing the money. The worst part was when the clients he had recruited started demanding that he return their investment. People from his neighborhood, school friends, even distant relatives. Michael had promised them they would make a lot of money, and now everyone wanted him to answer for it. My son went from being the successful entrepreneur to being the neighborhood scammer. Jennifer, his wife, left him when she realized they had debts of more than $50,000. She went back to her parents and took the kids with her. Michael had to leave the house in Westlake and move back in with his sister Emily. But family tensions grew when creditors started coming to Emily's house looking for Michael. My daughter, who has her own financial problems, couldn't deal with that situation. Do you know what it's like to see your son, who just a year ago was showing off his success to you, turned into a broken man, sued, abandoned by his wife, without a job, without money, without a future? It's one of the most painful things a father can experience. During all those difficult months, Michael never came looking for me. His pride was still stronger than his need. I knew from Emily that he was going hungry, that he didn't have money even for the bus, that he had had to sell even his cell phone to eat. But he preferred to suffer in silence rather than come to me and admit that I had been right from the beginning. One night in December 2019, Emily called me crying. "Dad, I can't have Michael here anymore. The people who lent him money come to the house. My neighbors have already told me that if he doesn't leave, they're going to call the police. But he has nowhere to go." That night I couldn't sleep. My son was about to end up on the street, and his pride wouldn't let him come to me. What would you do in that situation? Would you let your pride be more important than your child's well-being? The next day, I went to Emily's house. Michael was in the backyard, sitting in a plastic chair with a lost look. When he saw me arrive, he didn't know whether to hide or face me. "I'm here for you," I told him without further ado. "Pack your things. You're coming home with me." Michael looked at me with those eyes I had known since he was a child, those eyes that asked for help but didn't know how to do it. "Dad, I don't know how." "You don't have to say anything right now," I told him. "Just come with me. We'll talk later." The ride back to my house was silent. Michael was looking out the window, probably remembering all the times he had driven through those same streets in his brand new truck, showing off his success. Now we were both in my old Honda Civic, him carrying his few belongings in a plastic bag. That night, after eating some reheated beans with bread, Michael finally broke down. He started crying like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. "Dad, you were right about everything. Everything you told me came true. I'm a failure. I lost everything. I lost my family. People point at me on the street. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Do you know what it feels like when your son, after years of despising your advice, finally admits that you were right? It doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like sadness because you know that pain could have been avoided." "Michael," I told him that night, "I wasn't right because I was smarter than you. I was right because my dad taught me the same thing I tried to teach you. Wisdom isn't invented, it's inherited." During the following weeks, Michael stayed at my house trying to put his life back together. I told him he could stay as long as he needed, but with two conditions. First, that he was going to start studying online to finish a degree. Second, that he was going to get a job, whatever it was, to start paying his debts little by little. At first, Michael resisted. "Dad, I'm 33 years old. I can't start from scratch again." "Of course you can," I replied, "but this time you're going to build on solid foundations, not on sand." Michael got a job as a cashier at a gas station. The salary was less than what he used to spend on one dinner before, but it was honest money. At night, he studied business administration online. On weekends, he helped a neighbor who has an auto repair shop. Little by little, very slowly, my son began to change. He stopped showing off things he didn't have. He stopped promising things he couldn't deliver. He began to value consistent work, even if it was humble. One day, after 6 months of living with me, Michael said, "Dad, I want to ask you for forgiveness. Not just for not listening to you, but for disrespecting you all these years, for making you feel bad for being a teacher, for showing off things to you while you lived humbly." That conversation made me cry, because I saw in my son's eyes the child I had raised, not the arrogant man he had become. "Michael," I told him, "we all make mistakes. What's important is learning from them. Your dad also made many mistakes when he was young. The difference is that I was lucky enough to have a father who taught me to recognize my mistakes and correct them. Today, 2 years later, Michael still lives with me. He finished his business administration degree with very good grades. He got a job as a supervisor at a construction company. His salary is modest but steady. He has already paid half of his debts. Most importantly, Michael has gotten his children back. Jennifer, his ex-wife, realized that he had really changed and now allows the kids to come to the house on weekends. Michael brings them here, to the same living room where I'm telling this story right now, and I tell them stories like I used to tell him when he was little. Do you know what the most beautiful thing about all this is? That now Michael asks me for advice. He doesn't reject it anymore. He doesn't laugh at his father's wisdom anymore. Now he knows that the years I have over him aren't just age, they're experience. Last week, a friend offered him to get into another business that promised quick profits. Michael came to me and asked me what I thought. "Dad, what would you do in my place?" I told him the same thing my father would have told me. "Michael, if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is because it's not true. You already have a stable job, you're paying your debts, you're getting your family back. Why risk all that for a promise?" Michael smiled and agreed with me. "You're right, Dad. I've learned that what's secure, even if it's slow, is always better than what's fast and risky." That night I went to bed thinking about my own father, who died 15 years ago. I thought about all the advice he gave me and that I, in turn, tried to pass on to Michael. I thought about how wisdom is passed from generation to generation, like a torch that must never be extinguished. My son Michael had to lose everything to understand that his father's advice wasn't obstacles to his success, but steps to build a solid life. He had to hit rock bottom to realize that humility isn't weakness, but strength. Now, when I see Michael coming home tired from work, when I see him studying at night, when I see him playing with his children in the yard, I feel that my mission as a father is complete. Not because I was right, but because my son finally learned the most important lesson of all, that life isn't about winning fast, but about building to last. If you're listening to this story, and you have children who don't listen to you, who think your advice is outdated, who think they know more than you, don't despair. Life has a way of teaching the lessons that we as parents couldn't teach with words. And if you're a child listening to this, maybe it's time for you to reconsider your parents' advice, not because they're always right, but because they've already walked paths that you're just discovering. I want to thank you for staying until the end of this story. If something I shared touched your heart, if you know someone going through a similar situation, or if you've experienced something like this with your children or your parents, I'd love for you to tell me about it in the comments. Let me know what city or state you're listening from. Do you have a similar story you'd like to share? Is there advice from your parents that you didn't understand until it was too late? Your story could be the next one we share here, because we all have something to teach and something to learn from other people's experiences as parents and children. And if this story helped you reflect on your own family relationship, share it with someone you think needs to hear it. Sometimes, other people's stories are the mirror we need to see our own reality. Remember that on this channel, you'll always find real stories from real families, told straight from the heart, without filters, without embellishments, just the truth as it is. See you in the next story, where we'll continue sharing those life experiences that teach us that, at the end of the day, family is the most important thing we have, even if sometimes we have to lose everything to understand it.